Speak to Win. Chapter 10. Controlling Your Space. We cannot make it rain, but we can see to it that the rain falls on prepared soil. Henry Nouwen. One of the key determinants of your success as a speaker is the room in which you speak. You must inspect it carefully and prepare it as much as possible. There are three key physical considerations in speaking. They are: number 1, sound; 2, light; and 3, temperature. These are the three areas where things always go wrong in a speaking engagement. You have heard of Murphy's Law, which says that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. This law was probably discovered by people who give talks and seminars in hotels and convention facilities. Know the lies people tell. The first rule to know when holding any kind of public speaking function is that hotels lie. I learned this when I first began speaking, and I have seen it proved over and again. 90% of the time, hotels lie. It is almost as if the people who arrange facilities for conventions, seminars, and speeches have taken a special course in the various lies, distortions, and half-truths that they tell the meeting planners and speakers, especially on the day and at the moment of the presentation. Fire regulations. One of their favorites is fire regulations. They always say that they cannot do or change something because of fire regulations. The fact is that they do not want to change anything about the room or the setup. Their claim of fire regulations is invariably false, but it intimidates the inexperienced meeting planner into acquiescence. Whenever I hear this, I simply say, "My father is a fire inspector, and I'm quite familiar with the fire regulations. Please show me where in the regulations it says you're not allowed to arrange the room in this way." This always stuns them. They immediately drop the excuse and begin to cooperate. I've seen this happen over and over again in hundreds of facilities. It's computer controlled. Another excuse that they give you is that the lighting is computer controlled. There's nothing we can do about it until the engineer arrives. For some reason, the engineer is never on the premises or immediately available. He or she is at a meeting, away on vacation, or dealing with another emergency. How to deal with the lies people tell. The key to succeeding in organizing the facilities is for you to be friendly, polite, and charming, but simultaneously gently insistent with the staff. Your goal must be not to get them mad at you early in the process. They're the only ones who can help you. But here are some things you can do to get some results. Threaten them if necessary. One day, I was doing a seminar in Tampa, Florida. The room temperature was 80 degrees. People were perspiring, waving their seminar materials as fans, and generally unhappy and dissatisfied. They were starting to leave and ask for their money back on the way out. I asked the organizer to call the hotel and have them turn the temperature down. She called them repeatedly, but to no avail. They gave all the usual excuses. The engineer is working on it. It is computer controlled. We are doing everything we can. Finally, at the break, I called the head office and told them that if the temperature did not come down and the air conditioner was not turned on within 2 minutes, we would cancel the seminar, refuse to pay for the room, and sue them for lost revenues. It was amazing. As I stood there, I could feel the air conditioning coming on. After pleading with them for 2 hours and listening to every excuse imaginable, as soon as we threatened not to pay, the air conditioning roared on and stayed on for the rest of the function. Refuse to pay. I always encourage my clients to call someone in charge and tell the person, "We will not pay for the room if the air conditioning or temperature is not adjusted immediately." In almost every case, all the technical difficulties that had been holding them back are suddenly resolved, and the temperature is lowered or adjusted to the proper comfort level. Check the lighting. Lighting is very important in a seminar presentation. The total attention of the audience should be on your face, with only casual side glances to your props. Remember that 70% of the people in your audience are visuals. They can only process information if they can see it. The other 30% are auditories. These are people who process information only when they can hear it clearly. Your job is to cater to and satisfy both groups. 50% of the time, the lighting will be wrong in some way when you arrive to do your presentation. For this reason, you always want to arrive early enough so that you can check out the lighting thoroughly before you go on stage. If something is wrong with the lighting when you begin to speak, it's almost impossible to make any changes afterward. Where to put the lights. In stage or TV productions, people spend 1 or 2 days in advance just setting up the lights. They arrange the lighting and move it around so that there are no shadows on the stage or on the actors. They make sure that every single person is absolutely clear to every single participant in the audience, from every angle. This is the ideal. As the speaker, you must be fully lit 100% of the time from both sides so there are no shadows on your face. It is not unusual for the facility to have lights that beam on you from the top rather than from the front, shading out the bottom half of your face. This causes a negative audience reaction. The Phantom of the Opera. On one speaking occasion at a hotel, we asked for additional lighting, and the hotel told us, remember, hotels lie, that it could only find one spotlight. The hotel staff brought it into the room and set it up to one side at the rear of the audience. This spotlight shone on one half of my face, giving me a Phantom of the Opera look for my entire presentation. The reaction from the audience was immediate and negative. People actually became angry. They criticized the talk and demanded their money back. They walked out. For some reason, the half-face lighting made me look sinister and evil, and the people reacted in a negative way. We never made the mistake of having only one light again. Your face is all important. When I organize lighting for a seminar, I tell the technicians that a person in the back row should be able to see a zit on my face from where she is sitting. I emphasize that the lighting on the stage should be as bright as an operating theater. They often nod and pretend to agree, but secretly think that you don't know what you're talking about. You must therefore be insistent. In many cases, the staff will set up your stage and podium for the convenience of the screens rather than to illuminate the speaker clearly. The staff members will say, "If we turn on all the lights, it'll wash out the screen." Be alert to this because it happens all the time. Insist that you don't care how the screens look. The light on your face is what counts. Check in ahead of time. I was giving a seminar in Irvine, California, a couple of years ago. My seminar was for the entire afternoon, and as usual, I arrived in the middle of the morning so I could watch the previous speakers. When I walked into the room, a first-class Hyatt hotel facility, it was only half lit. It was a form of semi-darkness, almost like a nightclub. The speaker was visible in a hazy, distant sort of way. I was appalled. I immediately brought one of the hotel staff members to the room. I said, "Is there any way you can turn up the lighting in this room?" He said, "Oh, did you want the lighting up full?" When I said yes, he immediately went to a wall panel, touched a couple of buttons, and the whole room became fully lit, classroom style. It was a shock to me and to everyone in the audience. They had been straining to see and get the message of the speaker for the last 2 hours. It's not a nightclub performance. This has become a common refrain for me. Whenever I go to a speaking engagement, I tell them that I want all the lights on full. I tell them this is not a nightclub performance. It is amazing to me how many professional lighting technicians think that the speaker wants the audience to be darkened while the speaker is so brightly lit that he or she cannot see people in the audience because of the glaring light in his eyes. The other problem with this is that the audience views the speaker more as an entertainer. People sit quietly to watch the performance, not wanting to make any noise. They do not respond or interact with the speaker. The audience sits almost like a mole peering out of its hole at the speaker lit up on the stage. Remember, unless you are a professional entertainer in a nightclub, you want what is called 100 candle power at desk level. This means that the entire room should be as bright as a schoolroom. You want people to be able to see one another, see you clearly, and take notes on the subject you are discussing. This is essential for audience enjoyment and satisfaction. Control the room setup. The people who set up the chairs and tables in any seminar function are not highly paid. Some of them cannot read the instructions that you have so laboriously discussed with the facility staff. Their goal is to get in, set up the chairs and tables as fast as possible, and get out before anybody asks them to make any changes. Supervise the room setup. When we were conducting our own seminars around the country, we would always ask to be present when the room was being set up. We knew that there were a myriad of mistakes that they would make, and we wanted to be able to catch them while the staff was still available to do the heavy lifting. Countless times we were told that the room was being used for a function the night before and that the setup staff would arrive at 3 a.m. We would say, "Fine, then we will be here at 3 a.m. for the setup." Time after time, we would arrive at 3 a.m. and the room would already be set up. It would invariably be set up incorrectly and the staff was gone. It then became a major issue to get people back to recognize the tables and chairs the way we had originally requested. Never take this part of the speaking engagement for granted. We always write out clear instructions with diagrams which we mail and fax to the meeting planners. We then phone or meet with them personally and discuss the details point for point with them so that they're clear. Take nothing for granted. But even when you have thoroughly explained exactly the way you want the room to be set up, in almost every case, people will disregard your instructions or misunderstand what you have asked for. This is why it is so important to be there early enough to check out everything and to make changes when necessary. Part of the reason I have been successful as a speaker over the years is my almost obsessive concern for the comfort of the audience. From my very first seminar with 7 people, I gave a lot of thought to the audience's ability to see me clearly in everything that I was writing. I set up and reorganized the chairs and tables to ensure maximum comfort and visibility. As my audiences grew, my concern for their comfort never diminished. Eventually, I was conducting seminars for hundreds of people over several days. I became very sensitive to the small changes that cause the audience to be much happier with what I say. Everyone should see you easily. Every person in the audience should be able to see you clearly from wherever he or she is sitting. This requires that, whenever possible, you organize the chairs in half circles moving outward from the stage, very much like a performing arts theater. If it is a much larger audience, all the seats along both sides should be angled at 45 degrees so that people sitting in those chairs are looking directly at the speaker without having to twist or turn. The first row should be close enough for you to reach out and touch them, almost like the first row in a live arts theater, where the actors could reach out and touch audience members. The farther away the first row of participants is, the greater the distance across which you must project your energy in order to make contact with them. Keep people close and close together. Imagine that your energy is a form of electricity. You want to create an electric arc, an emotional and chemical connection with your audience. The closer the first row is, the easier it is to make that electrical connection, which then runs through the entire audience. Whenever possible, do not allow a center aisle while you're speaking. When you speak to a center aisle, your energy runs right down the aisle and out the back of the room. But when you have a solid row of people in front of you, your energy cascades into the first row like a wave from the ocean. It splashes into the audience, connecting with people row after row. Put your access and egress aisles on the sides so that people can get to and from their chairs, but never allow a center aisle if you have the choice. Move them forward. Many facilities think that you will value the room more if they spread the tables and chairs over the entire area. This is not true. People do not care how much room there is behind them. They only care about how much distance there is between themselves and the speaker on the stage. In the theater, the closer the seats are to the stage and to the actors or entertainers, the more expensive they are. There is a good reason for this. The closer the person is to the speaker, the more enjoyable it is to the audience member. There is more intensity, more pleasure, and more satisfaction in seeing the speaker up close and personal. It is not uncommon for the meeting facility to put the first row of chairs or tables 10 or 20 feet back from the stage. I called this the shouting across the street model. This is where you have to really work hard and project higher amounts of energy to make contact with the first row of your audience. This is both difficult and unnecessary. If you arrive early enough, you can ask the staff to bring the back row of tables or chairs up to the front. I have often required that they bring as many as 3 rows of chairs and tables to the front to fill it in. I want to be able to touch the people in the first row when I reach out with my hand. Spread out the chairs. One final point with regard to seating. The standard meeting facility, hotel, or conference seating arrangements were designed when the average person was thinner than people are today. For this reason, if chairs are put shoulder to shoulder next to one another, sometimes even locked together, most of the audience will be crushed by heavy people either to the right or to the left of them. They will be sitting with their shoulders hunched forward during your talk. If you have any control over the way the chairs are set up, insist that the chairs be shaken loose and that there be 4 inches or more between each chair. This will ensure that the audience will be more comfortable, more relaxed, and more open to the quality of your message. It is hard to connect with an audience that feels crushed together in chairs that are too small for them, especially if the first row is set up 20 or 30 feet away from where you're speaking. These may seem like small points to you, but they are major points for each person in your audience. When the facility staff members start to complain about fire regulations, just tell them that you've checked with the fire chief and this setup has been approved. That will stop them every time. Control the stage. Visibility is a critical factor in a talk or speech of any kind. The larger the audience, the higher your stage must be. Here is the rule. The person in the back row must be able to see the top half of your body, from the waist up. Therefore, the bigger the audience and the farther back the chairs go, the higher must be your stage. You will notice that in large theaters, the stage is quite high, even above the heads of the people in the first rows. There is a good reason for this. People come exclusively to see the actors or entertainers, especially from the waist up. Some speakers like to get off the stage and walk around the audience. Personally, I think this is cute, but ineffective. Why? Because when the speaker is walking among the audience members, 80% or 90% of the audience cannot see the speaker and has no visible connection with his or her face. It may be entertaining for the people immediately surrounding the speaker, but it is largely lost on most of the audience participants. Tune in to the sound system. The sound systems in hotels and facilities have greatly improved over the years. Nonetheless, as I mentioned in Chapter 8, most facilities try to save money by installing cheap systems at the end of construction. They then recommend that meeting planners bring in their own sound systems or rent expensive sound systems from the hotel or convention facility. The full volume sound systems then become a major profit center for the facility in which you are holding your talk. Most of the seminar companies and professional organizations that I work with will hire and bring in their own sound people. This is always preferable, even though it is more expensive. Most people who work in hotels are unionized and don't really care that much about whether the sound system is adequate or clear for the speaker. It is a sad fact, but true. Microphones. The best sound systems in use today consist of a small, skin-colored wire that hooks over your ear and comes along the side of your cheek. It's virtually invisible to the audience, and it is as clear as a bell throughout the entire room. More and more, these systems are available to speakers. The lavalier. Today, the most common alternatives offered are lavalier microphones, either remote or wired. A wireless lavalier microphone is best. It clips on your tie or lapel, and a wire connects to another device that clips on your belt in the back. This device is connected to an amplifier that is controlled by a sound person at the side or the back of the room. This type of microphone enables you to walk around and use your hands freely. It is often called a freedom microphone. The second type of lavalier microphone, which I used to insist upon until technology advanced to its present state, is a hard-wired microphone. This is a microphone that is wired into the sound system by a long cord. This type of microphone has no distortion and is often excellent for a talk or seminar. If you have a long enough cord on this type of a microphone, you can walk around freely. The handheld microphone. This type of microphone is ideal if you are giving an introduction or if you are simply making a few remarks. If you are giving a lengthier presentation, a handheld microphone eliminates the use of one hand. It forces you to make all of your gestures with a single hand, and it interferes with your natural expressiveness during your talk. If you use a handheld microphone, be sure that you hold it close to your mouth but under your chin. You don't want it in your face in such a way that it blocks your face from the audience. Always hold it down, slightly below your chin, and hold it close so that your voice projects clearly. Managing a podium. For many business talks, you will be required to speak from behind a podium. This podium will have one or two microphones built in. It's essential that you adjust these microphones so they're as close to your mouth as possible. You then stand straight and lean forward slightly, speaking into the microphone so that everyone in the audience can hear you. Speakers often stand too far back from podium microphones and are not aware that their voices are not being picked up throughout the room. It is essential to lean slightly forward. Resist the temptation to lean on the podium. It gives you a sloppy, slouchy look and suggests a lack of certainty in what you're saying. You can use your hands to adjust your paper or notes, but otherwise let them hang by your sides or rise naturally to make your points, without touching the lectern or podium at all. Even better, stand next to the lectern while you're speaking, only walking behind it to glance at your notes. The more the audience can see your full body, the more it will enjoy your talk. Using visual supports and props. When I speak for more than 60 minutes, I always use some kind of visual prop or presentation to illustrate my key points. This is because 70% of the audience members only register what you say if they can see it. They have to see your ideas in writing. My favorite tool is an overhead projector. I stand next to the projector and write on acetate sheets, which project onto a screen behind me. Each time I make an important point, I flip on the overhead projector and write the point down clearly. I leave it for a few seconds, turn off the projector, and continue my talk. I also use this method to create stick figures and other illustrations that bring my points to life. Many people have criticized me for using such an old-fashioned method of illustration when PowerPoint is so readily available. Nonetheless, they're always amazed at how much more enjoyable a live presentation is, with each keyword written down and the projector going on and off, than a PowerPoint presentation. Death by PowerPoint. As I mentioned earlier, in the speaking industry, we use the phrase death by PowerPoint. The reason for this is that when PowerPoint came out, too many people embraced it as a central prop for their presentations, and they forgot about their voices, words, and gestures. The PowerPoint carried the weight of the message, which it was never meant to do. If you use PowerPoint or any prepared visuals, you should use them as tools that keep the focus of your audience on your face and personality. When I use PowerPoint to illustrate key points with small groups, I bring up one line at a time. I discuss that line and explain it before bringing up the second line or illustration. Never bring up an entire slide and then attempt to read through the slide. Everyone in the audience will be reading up and down while you're speaking. They will not be paying attention to you. Face the audience. When you use PowerPoint, be sure you have a laptop in front of you so that you can see what is projecting onto the screen behind you or beside you. Never look at or talk to the screen. Never turn away from the audience. Always keep audience eye contact during the presentation. When you have finished making a point and you want to elaborate on it verbally, push the B key and blank out the screen so that every eye comes back to you. Remember the 5x5 rule. Remember the 5x5 rule for PowerPoint. Never have more than 5 lines on a slide, and never have more than 5 words in each line. In addition, each of the words must be as large as possible to fill the line. People in the back row must be able to read the screen easily and absorb the key points of your presentation. Remember that the PowerPoint is a prop, a support, not the main message. It is merely a tool to emphasize and reinforce the points you're making, especially when it comes to numbers. Flip charts and whiteboards. With small audiences, you can use flip charts or whiteboards, but never forget that the focus must be on your face, gestures, and words. If you use a flip chart, prepare it in advance by writing your key points in pencil on the flip chart. These will be invisible to the audience, but will allow you to write clearly and authoritatively, as if from memory. When you use a flip chart, after you have made your point and people have had a chance to absorb the words, numbers, or illustrations that you have written or drawn, turn the page over so that you once more have a blank page. This helps the audience refocus on you. Another way to use a flip chart is to write out your key points on alternate pages in advance. Be sure you have a clean sheet facing the audience before you begin. When you go to the flip chart for the first time, turn over the clean sheet and there will be your first set of points. When you turn over this sheet, there will be a second clean sheet, covering up the next set of points. If you use a whiteboard, after you have finished making your key points, erase them so that the whiteboard is once again blank. Otherwise, your audience's eyes will be flicking back and forth like a windshield wiper between you and the words on the board. In every case, you want the audience to come back to your face without being distracted by what is written or projected on the board or screen. Check it out carefully. If you're going to use PowerPoint or any kind of electrical device for your talk, it is essential that you arrive well in advance and check everything out before you get on the stage. You will be amazed at how often professional technicians will set things up incorrectly. You will be amazed at how often your simple instructions have been ignored or misunderstood. There is only one way to be sure that your presentation will go smoothly, and that is for you to set it up and rehearse it in advance of actually taking the stage in front of a live audience. Control the temperature. 90% of the times that you speak, the temperature in the room will be wrong. In some cases, it'll be too cool, but in most cases, it'll be too warm. The reason for this is simple. It costs money to generate the electricity that drives the air conditioning system. Once a hotel has rented you a room, including the cost of utilities, its engineers are instructed to do everything possible to reduce the electricity allocation to your room. This means turning off the air conditioning as soon as possible or not turning it on at all. I always emphasize the importance of ensuring that the room is cool when people enter in the morning. It never ceases to amaze me how many meeting rooms are 80 and 90 degrees at 6 a.m., and there is no one available to turn on the air conditioning. The meeting planners often have to shout and scream to get the facility managers to turn the air conditioning on. Don't trust the facilities staff. Here's an example of why you need to supervise the facility carefully. I was giving a seminar in Boca Raton some years ago. After shouting, screaming, arguing, pleading, and threatening, the staff finally turned on the air conditioning. The temperature was about 85 degrees, and people were already arriving. Finally, when the seminar began, the temperature was down to about 75 degrees. As I stood up to speak, you could hear the air conditioning system being shut off by the engineers. It went silent. The temperature immediately began to rise toward the 90-degree plus temperatures outside. It was unbelievable. The ideal room temperature. The very best audience temperature is about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that, the temperature is too cool, and above that temperature, the brain does not function as well as it could. All over the world, you will have to argue, fight, plead, or threaten the hotel or convention center people to get them to make the room cool enough so that your audience is comfortable. When you arrange for a meeting facility, put a clause into the contract specifying a maximum temperature of 68 degrees, something like, no payment for this room will be required if the temperature goes above 68 degrees for more than 5 minutes. Some friends of mine who conduct seminars nationwide use this clause and have standing thermometers spread around the room on the various participants' tables. They check these thermometers on a regular basis. If one of the thermometers goes above 68 degrees, they immediately call the hotel staff and point this out. They tell them that they have 3 more minutes before the room is free. They have saved thousands of dollars in facilities fees by using this device. Of course, the hotels hate them. One last point. When the facility finally agrees to keep the temperature at 68 degrees, be sure to say, do not change this temperature unless you have specific permission from me personally. There are always people in the audience who have extremely thin skins. If the temperature is 75 degrees, which begins to come sweltering for most people, they will complain that it is too cool. These hypersensitive people sneak out, find a hotel staff person, demand that they turn up the temperature, and then sneak back into the room. Don't let this happen to you. Summary. The meeting room and stage are critical tools for your performance. Every single element has a positive or negative effect on the impression you make on your audience, and everything counts. Make up your own checklist regarding light, staging, sound, and temperature. Go through this checklist with the meeting planner in advance, and arrive early so that you can go through this checklist once more with the staff. Always expect that mistakes will be made. Always expect that the hotels will not tell you the truth. The signal that things are about to go wrong is when they use the code words, "Don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of that." For some reason, these words mean nothing is going to be done to comply with your request. When in doubt, always ask to speak to the manager. This is your last recourse. Whereas the staff is just trying to get through the day, the manager is usually concerned about you using their facility again in the future. When in doubt, go higher. When you have taken care of every single physical ingredient possible, no one will be aware of it except yourself. The audience members will not even know why it is that they are comfortable in their seats and that they can all see without twisting. They will not be aware that the temperature is comfortable and that the sound is clear. They will not know exactly why it is that they can see and enjoy you clearly from anywhere in the room. They will not be aware of these things at a conscious level, but subconsciously they will be grateful, and afterward they will compliment you on giving a great talk.